So obviously, the issue that we're discussing over this two-day conference is funding. And all organizations in our sector, I think, would appreciate having a full-time communications officer, but very few can afford that, even the largest organizations. So it was through that financial imperative that three organizations came together a couple of years ago, being the Runnymede Trust, the organizers of this conference, BTEG, that Teb is representing today, and also Rota, Raising the Agenda. They came together and made a joint application for funding. And the result of that successful application was myself, the CREM project. So CREM is an anagram. It stands for Communicating the Race Equality Message More Effectively. And so I started about a year and a half ago in that post, and pre-COVID, in the good old days when we used to work in offices, I used to spend 1 day a week in the BTEG offices, 1 day a week in the Runnymede offices, 2 days a week in Rota, and then the 5th day of the week I was supposed to be out in the community working with whoever needed help. So my project supports any race equality organisation based in London who wants help and support with their communications. So in that way, I work with Runnymede, and I know Carol, the organiser of this conference. So when she was planning this last year, she was bouncing ideas off me. I was asking me, could I get somebody from BTEG to come and speak? And could I get somebody from Rota? Because I work with these organizations. Yes, no problem. And then she was asking me for help with promoting it and writing tweets or whatever. And then I thought, well, really, I should just come on board and kind of, the CREM project should sponsor this event, because what they're trying to do is exactly what my project is trying to do, which is bring organizations within the sector together and help amplify their voices. So that's why the CREM project is a co-sponsor of this two-day conference. Okay, well, I think we're all here now. And we've got 32 participants, so that's great. So I will now attempt to share my screen and play you the speech that Teb's we pre-recorded last week. And as I say, if you've got any questions that are sparked, any thoughts you'd like to share that are sparked by this speech, please do make a note of it. Press your raise hand emoticon, and then I'll come back to you later. So let me attempt now to share my screen.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Rashid. I'm currently the Deputy Chief Executive of BTEG, Black Training Enterprise Group. We're a national race equality charity. We've been operational for 30 years, in fact, this year. I'm really looking forward to recognising the work we've done over the years. Initially, we were doing almost everything for everyone, but around 2008, the point of major austerity in the country, we were left to feel quite vulnerable, not just us, but the sector as a whole, to really think about, well, who are we, how are we going to survive, what do we want to be known for? So at that point, we had to take a step back and reflect and really evidence ourselves in terms of what are the core issues that we want to be known for. And we really focused on 3 core areas, which is what we stand by at the moment. And they are criminal justice, and within that, young communities. We hope, of course, continue to provide. Yeah, I know, but that's supposed to be like a meeting training room, isn't it? In those core areas as well.
Take me over, I can't use it.
A real reflection for us as a sector, for us as an organisation, and continue. I've been working in the government sector for 30 years.
Lee, you need to go on mute.
Have to do what funders can do to support us to survive moving forward. This last year has been kind of a real eye-opener for all of us, and it's been really encouraging to see funders working together, collaborating, joint programs. So on reflection of the last year, but also the 30 years I've worked in the sector, I've got 8 core messages I think I want to get across to funders. So the first one, which I think will resonate quite strongly with a lot of organisations, is that provision of flexible funding that supports core costs as well as project funding. So the flexibility and the trust in us to know what we need and why we need it to deliver, to be able to allocate to core costs. We always have that deficit of not being able to have overarching core roles within an organisation that needs us to survive, but also grow. Core leadership roles, core IT roles, core marketing roles, we're always in that deficit. Second point is around simplifying application process, which includes opportunities with applicants and submission of videos, for example. So the turnaround time is one thing. I think that's really important to think about quick turnaround times, because some of the issues we're working with are the here and now, not something 8 months, 10 months later. So we need to think about the turnaround times, but also the simplified application for process. Linked to that, allowing us to articulate our intersectionality issues and the messages we want to get across through more creative ways. Point 3, I think, is about maintaining culturally aware and empathetic staff. It's important funders have that understanding of the cultural nuances, the narratives that we're up against, the cultural needs within our specialisms. Funders also need to think about what lens they're looking at reserves and assets from. As much as I respect and understand the need to do that, funders need that reassurance around sustainability and survival of projects and organisations, at the same time to really recognise that small organisations really struggle to build a reserve, and even more so now in this last year when we've had to dip into our reserves, and it will take time to rebuild them in the short term. So just a reflection on what that means in the current climate. Number 5, BAME organisations, Black, Asian, minoritized ethnic community organisations, have been struggling to be recognised as specialist organisations, partly because of the political push and the agendas a decade ago, but also just the funding not being there for specialist areas. I think the recognition needs to be there, and it has been in this last year. Specialist organisations like Race Equality Leads, women's-led organisations have suddenly started being recognised for their specialisms, and I think this needs to be put back on the table and be much more conscious of it. I think I kind of mentioned this before, but specialist organisations need to be able to demonstrate their experiences. BTEG needs to be able to demonstrate what we do in a much more creative and fluid way. We want to be able to articulate what we do beyond a piece of paper, and sometimes we can't get that message across. Intersectionality is such a key part of what we do and how we deliver, but how do we get that across if the funders are only looking at single issues and silo issues? We need to revisit the question of exit strategy and what that actually means. What happens when the funding runs out? That puts pressure on any organisation in terms of what happens after 2 years, 3 years. That's not good for us, and that's not good for funders in terms of that legacy, in terms of sustainability. So can funders work together more to continue some of the projects? The issues don't go away in a year or 2 years, so can we have that conversation? And I think the last point is around longer term funding, definitely, but also non-financial support. I think the recognition by many funders already over the years, but ourselves in the sector, that we need the non-financial support as much as the money to build our capacity, to build our infrastructure, to be on top of the game when it comes to IT, when it comes to marketing, when it comes to visibility and messaging. So we're always applauding those funders that have provided non-financial support, but we could definitely do more of that, with more of that. I hope some of these messages resonate and can be put onto the tables for further discussions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for that, Tebs. I'm seeing we have, everyone's telling me to put myself on mute. That wasn't me making noise during that Tebs' speech. I was listening quietly. So scrolling through the chat, lots of messages to me. Anybody got any questions for Tebs? Helen Jones says, I'd also like to see core funding, which specifically enables groups to develop connections and solidarity with others. Nice point, Helen. I mean, well, this event, or while not freeing up funding, is about helping organizations to develop connections with others. So we are hoping to facilitate that. But has anybody got any points, Ray, that they'd like to address that were raised by Tebs in there? Claude, I see you with your hand up. I'll just unmute you, or if I can do that. Or you unmute yourself. Yes, go ahead, sir.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can, yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. I'm based in Leeds, yeah, and I know BTEC does some fantastic work. I've had links with them in the past. Is there any chances that they could be doing more work outside of London, kind of sharing good practice? Because there's a lot of strands of their work that we could do with up in Leeds and I'm sure outside of London. So have they got any plans to share their good practice outside of London? Thank you.
Tebs, would you like to first of all talk a bit about the work that BTEC does, because not everybody here necessarily knows that. And yeah, do you have any plans to work outside of London and specifically in Leeds? Thanks for that question.
Sure. Thank you, Lee. Thanks, Lee, and thank you everyone for being here. I must say that was really unnerving watching myself, and I hate that. But anyway, got through that, and thanks, Claude, for your question. Very quickly, as I said at the beginning of that video, we've been around 30 years, and our three core strands at the moment are looking at criminal justice, education, and employment. We've always had this two-pronged approach of looking at the work that we do, and that is a top-down policy, challenging kind of systemic inequalities, but also the bottom-up approach, working directly in communities with young people, particularly within schools, etc. So this two-pronged approach is something that I've always valued within BTEC. One of the reasons I've stayed for so long, I've been with BTEC maybe 17 years myself now. And in terms of one of the values that we work to is that we don't want to take over out there in the regions. We want to collaborate. So what we don't want to do is come and step on anyone's toes. We've always wanted to work outside of London, have done occasionally, and like many of you here, we've been funder driven as well. So where the funding has allowed us to in the past work in other regions and cities, we have, and we will definitely want to. One thing I've been advocating and want to do more of is joint applications. So Claude or anyone here, if there is an opportunity where we can collaborate and do joint applications. We've just recently done a joint lottery application with a couple of organisations, and that model is where we want to go. We have our own specialism and we want to build on the specialisms within the localities. We don't want to come into Leeds or Manchester or Bristol and be another BTEC in that area, but what we do want to do is collaborate and build on those specialisms. So I think that going back to your question, Claude, is if there is something that you have in mind, let's have that conversation. Let's co-produce, and then this is like that trendy term at the moment, let's co-produce something that we can work together on. But your point also about sharing the good practice, when we're getting better at putting stuff out there through websites, through blogs. We finally have a regular stream of blogs. Lee's been quite instrumental in making that happen. So in terms of trying to share good practice through different platforms, different avenues, we are definitely getting better. We've always wanted to, again, I keep reiterating this, but it's always been the capacity issue. One thing I've recently secured for BTEC, and I'm sharing this because I think it's just an amazing opportunity, is getting some pro bono corporate support to help us with this kind of thing. So we've just been assigned to big corporates to help me really think about this model and how we want to grow this being not just BTEC, but our visibility. And so the corporates sort of coaching support that I'm going to get will hopefully help share more of that good practice on different platforms, but in different ways as well. We're trying to put out more kind of training and workshops to, again, not just give the resource, but also share learning within the room. I think the networking is crucial. There's so many of us out there doing our own thing, but the more we come together, collaborate, and I think somebody put that in the chat as well, using this space of thinking, okay, well, what next? We're here meeting, talking, but what next? So if you can and want to reach out to BTEC, let's have that conversation. Let's be candid about it.
Hi, Teb. Sorry,
Hi,
my name's Sonja Carr. I'm from the Southwest. My organisation, Wiltshire Racial Equality Council, started in 1968, and we're still going. We're one of the few RECs, yeah. And what we're doing, we're going for funding to various organisations. And when we apply, they always tell us that other Caucasian organisations, I don't use the word Caucasian, but I'm using that. There are other organisations out there that are doing the work that we do. Yet the community okay, comes to us because they believe in the adage, somebody that looks like me. And we understand what the issues. So what are we doing wrong? What are we doing wrong?
Oh, well, first of all, I'll say it's not what you're doing wrong. And I said it in that little video that funders need to get their head round cultural awareness, cultural competency. They need to be much more aware of what we're up against and what the needs of the community are. And this is where the gap is. So we need to lobby, keep badgering on about this. We're in a better space this year, I say unfortunately, on the back of Black Lives Matter and George Floyd, that to have these conversations that in the past were not heard, difficult conversations, but we're in that better space, not just BTEC, I think all of us. The more we say this, the more they hear it. I've noticed, and I did a bit of work over the last few months about analysing how some funders have been using their funding to support specialist organisations, and it's worked. The sudden realisation, actually, we need you more than we realised, has come through, and we need to build on that. I think there is something about, and I as part of my role, I occasionally, when I find the time, look at draft applications before they're submitted, to be that critical friend. And it does come back to, and again, I mentioned this in the video, about how we are selling ourselves, how we are articulating. And it's not as assertive as it could be in some cases. I'm not saying yours, Sonja, of course.
We're fighting the thing, if we get too assertive, being called aggressive.
Yeah.
Because Marlene said that in her poem yesterday, and that is time and time again. They said they are frightened because we sound aggressive. And I think, really? And these are sometimes webinars, and I just get so frustrated. And yet they get the funding, we don't, and they come to and ask us for help. They ask us the immortal line, which I hate, where is the community?
Yeah, and you're echoing a lot of what we've experienced, and I'm sure many people in the room, we've been up against this for decades. It's not new. But I'm not glass half full type person, and I always try and think, okay, this is an opportunity now, where we are now with the conversations that are being had, so many funders wanting to be part of the conversation. I think we can be a bit more, I'll use the word assertive, candid and assertive about, what the issues are. And I think that we're being heard this time, whereas before we were saying stuff and it was almost talking to a brick wall. I feel we're being heard a little bit more now. And I think if we do this as a joint voice, and not just once, I think that's my other thing. Sometimes we'll say things once and hope things will change. We've got to do that drip feed, just like we've had the drip feed on us for decades as well. And the narratives are being so against us. We need to turn it around and actually constantly drip feed these messages to individuals, but also institutions as well. There are some really good allies out there in terms of the funding world. We need to work with them, have more conversations, reach out, be more proactive. We're beginning to do that. I do that, and I want to do more of that. So if there is any funders in the room, let's have more of these conversations and not just leave it at this one conference, and to really understand what specialism means. What does that mean? And again, in the video, I touched on intersectionality. We in this room don't look at silos, situations. I'm a Muslim woman. I have other issues as well.
I see you. I don't see a religion.
No, but what I'm trying to say is that I have multiple challenges. It's not just that I'm a Black woman. I'm also Muslim. I'm also Asian. So there's multiple factors that I want to talk about rather than just one at a time, which is what funders have done in the past.
I noticed lots of people keep talking about George Floyd. I just want everybody to look at the work of Josiah Wedgwood, who in the 17th century, he coined the word, not America, am I not a man and a brother? And George Floyd, taking the knee did not resonate in America. It started here in the UK. Okay, so look at the word of Josiah Wedgwood, who was an abolitionist of slavery. 1768.
Thanks for that comment, Sonja. We've got a couple of other questions in the chat that I would like to share with everybody. So Leon kind of links to what your earlier point Leon is asking, do you think funders have become more culturally aware in the current context of Black Lives Matter?
I mean, I can't say categorically yes, but at the same time, yes, in the sense that efforts are being made to reach out, to be proactive, rather than being told they are reaching out. There's a bit more of a conversation, and it is sometimes down to the individuals within the funders as well. Some funders are much more proactive, reaching out, always have done, and there's others that have, I am being candid now, been in their own little bubbles, but now beginning to think, actually, we need to be part of this conversation. And I think, and this is just the experiences I've had in the last few months with some funders, there's a genuineness there. It's not just, oh, we feel we need to do something because it looks good. And that's what I'm pleased to see and hear. There is a genuineness about wanting to understand. It is a shame. It's a real shame that it's taken this to get to this point, because we've been shouting about this for decades, just like Sonja has through her work. And it's only now we feel we've been heard a little bit more. So it's taken this, and I want to take advantage of the opportunity with those funders and have more of that conversation, that cultural awareness, cultural competency, understanding biases, which do exist. Fact, people can argue about, whether unconscious bias is worth having as a conversation piece or training. It's not the be all and end all. I always say that. Talking about unconscious bias within people, within systems, within institutions is part of the bigger picture. It's one of the pieces, but it's a crucial piece. And some of these funders have had biases embedded over the years, over decades again, that now need to be challenged. So yes, it is happening. And I do believe there is genuineness there as well.
Okay, we've only got 3 minutes left, so I'm just going to try and squeeze in one more question. So Vanessa has asked, how can small organisations outside of London, so similar to Claude's point earlier, how can small organisations outside of London work with you? Do you have some sort of membership subscription scheme, or is it just through direct contact?
I mean, reach out, that's the main thing. Reach out to us. I think we are really loving this whole Zoom space in all the work we're doing, to be able to connect with individuals and organisations around the country. It's always been that physical barrier, but actually now let's make most of this. Let's connect through Zoom, through Teams, or whatever it is, and have that conversation. I said it before. So we're not a membership organisation as such, in terms of like, you don't need to sign up and pay up or anything like that. But once you're on our books, in terms of like, you're on our radar, we put you on our database, and we can constantly send you out feeds of events we're doing, of our blogs, etc. But it's also about, let's have that initial conversation. Let's see what that connection could be. So drop me an email, whether it's myself or I delegate that to one of my colleagues, depending on which area of work you want to kind of connect up on. Let's have that initial conversation to see how we can collaborate, and whether that means physical or even a virtual thing. I think the world has changed, and we should be taking advantage of that. So I'm actually really liking this whole space. As much as I am tired of looking at the screen all day, every day, pretty much, I can't wait to get back into offices, meet people. I want to maintain some of that balance of actually meeting people around the country. Yesterday, I was on a training session I was delivering, and there's people from Manchester, Newcastle, Belfast, and where else would have had a chance to do that? And actually exchange material and knowledge and good practice. Sorry, Lee?
Can I just ask you then to drop your email in the chat, so for those people who'd like to connect with you, can email you directly, and we'll have time for just one more question, which I think relates to the work of BTEG. Christina has asked, are there any specialists trying to bridge the gap in knowledge for funders, specialists who work with small organisations as well? How do we turn this momentum into a long-term strategy? So I believe BTEG are doing some work like that, aren't they, Tess?
So read that again, Lee. I missed it. It was a bit muffly what you were saying.
Are there specialists trying to bridge the gap in knowledge for funders, specialists that work with small organisations as well?
Specialist. I mean, BTEG, and particularly Jeremy, our CEO, he's constantly engaging with the London Funders Group, other networks. Are there specialists? It's a good question.
I mean, I was thinking about the work that you're doing, that BTEC is doing about helping people get access to funding.
Yes. Yeah, thanks, Lee. Thanks for that nudge. So one of the things that we've done for many, many years, and we've started doing again in the last year or so, is building that capacity of small organizations, specialist organizations, to be able to get that message. And first of all, know what the message is before you kind of approach any stakeholder, funders being just one. I've always felt there's, when it comes to the art of communications, the art of negotiation, the art of sort of strategizing, we sometimes fall short, not because, you know, it's anyone's fault. I think, again, it goes back to capacity. Whose role is it? But once we're kind of more confident about, well, what is it we are? What do we want to project? Not what we've done in the past, but more about future strategizing, then we're in a better space to get those messages to funders and be able to sit around the table, have a coffee with a funder, to be able to do what those white organizations are doing and networking with funders, and changing the power balance. At the moment, it feels like so imbalanced, but somehow other organizations seem to have those conversations. We are doing that
Tebs, I'm sorry,
building.
I've got to stop you now. I know this could go on for more, but I'm being told we've got to wrap up. We've got to wrap up.
Just the very last point. I've given my email. Do drop me an email, but do nudge me if I miss your email, or I've gone quiet for a bit. Nudge me. I like you, all of you here. I'm busy as well, so I might miss one. But I look forward to hearing from some of you, and thanks for having me, Lee. Okay, thank you for that, Tebs. So we've got to wrap up now. We could have gone on longer, but there's other things to go and do. So please do enjoy the rest of the day. I'll be dropping in as well. I'm looking forward to the big panel debate we're having at the end of the day. I'll certainly be back for that. So do enjoy and hopefully see some of you later. And thank you again, Tebs.